Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the man behind the latest coup in Guinea Conakry says that he wants a peaceful transition. Colonel Mamady Doumboya calls a meeting of ministers of ousted President Alpha Conde after banning them from leaving the country and dissolving the government. We take a closer look. Now, the leaders of a military coup in Guinea have promised to set up a transitional government of national unity, but given no details of when the country would return to democratic elections. The takeover has toppled President Alpha Conde, who came to power in 2010 and has been accused of becoming increasingly authoritarian. Mario Sofas tells us more.
A day after the ousting of Guinea's president, Alpha Conde, the streets of the capital, Conakry, were under heavy patrol by soldiers. On Sunday, the military junta said that land and air borders had been closed, but on Monday announced that air frontiers had been reopened.
We are announcing the reopening of air borders and the resumption of commercial and humanitarian flights only.
Members of the ousted government are barred from leaving the country and have been ordered to hand back their official vehicles. They were also summoned to a meeting at the Guinean Parliament on Monday. The junta warns that any refusal to attend would be considered an act of rebellion and have called on Alpha Conde's security detail to turn themselves in.
The CNRD is ordering ex-presidential security personnel to join the rapid intervention group of KM36 immediately. Otherwise, a sweep search will be made throughout the country.
After Monday's meeting, Guinea's military junta announced the dissolution of the government and the National Assembly and have promised to set up a government of national unity. They have vowed not to pursue a witch hunt against the former government. Alpha Conde was re-elected for a third presidential term last October, following the introduction of constitutional reform that was roundly criticised by his opponents.
Well, on Sunday, supporters of the ousting of Conde took to the streets to celebrate. However, many Guineans still fear that his overthrow could mean instability.
Ils ont fait ça sans bagarre, sans tuer personne, sans ni bonne pierre. Donc ça vient de commencer. C'est pour cela que les gens ont peur le matin pour sortir le matin là. Mais Inch'Allah, dans la journée, on peut sortir.
Si cette situation perdure, il peut y avoir que l'armée revienne au pouvoir, parce que tout était déjà préparé. Imaginez dans un pays un professeur qui vient au pouvoir et qu'on nous dit que c'est un professeur de droit. Donc on se disait que vraiment l'espoir était permis que la Guinée connaisse pour la première fois une alternance en République de Guinée. Mais très malheureusement, le professeur s'est laissé berner par ses proches et finalement il est tombé dans son propre piège.
Well, Karim Kamara joins us now with more from Conakry. Karim, how widely representative of the mood amongst Guineans are those who are very publicly celebrating Conde's downfall that we saw on Sunday?
Well, and here we have the mixed feelings here. And those that we are there just took to the street just after the military had overthrown President Alpha Conde, and then came mainly from the opposition strongholds here in the Conakry and even in the interior, like in Labi, and about some 100 kilometers from Conakry. And in the Conakry, we saw them in Babito, Amdalai, Koza, and Tilwit. These are all strongholds of the opposition. And we also have supporters of Alpha Conde who are also in the majority, but they are very quiet, and they're very quiet, and very, very, very disappointed. And political analysts also on the ground here are very much skeptical about the whole scenario. They say this is a recipe and for Guinea at least to retrogress economically and socially. And they are also warning that if the military do not leave power immediately, hand over power to a democratically elected government, and this would mean that Guinea that will completely go down in the drain, and before it recovers, and they will take years. So this is the kind of fear people are going with. But to say everybody took to the street to celebrate the victory or the dethrone of President Alpha Conde, no, the feelings here are divided.
So there's a lot of uncertainty as to what this means for the country's return to democracy. Details of that promised transitional government are still scarce. Do you have any insight into what comes next?
Well, it is yet difficult to say, but we don't know really exactly what the junta leaders mean by saying that we are going to form a government of national unity. Whether they are going to, and whether the transition is going to be led by a civilian president, though we don't know. But it will be like something like a hot kick in their mouth this time, and to say they will continue to rule as a junta, and then to say we are the president and we have civilians around us. It will be very, very difficult because we have had experience here with former junta leader Captain Musa Dadis Camara, where it turned out to be a bloodshed in this country. So, and the opposition and the civil society movement will not allow this to happen. So this is the kind of situation that will take place at any time, because they are just waiting on the juntas to pronounce the particular period of this transition period that it will take from now on to when. That's what we want to know, because I know they have time limit. They have time limit that we want to propound to the coup leaders.
And tell us a bit more about any specifics that you might have about what actually came out of that meeting on Monday with ministers that Doumboya held.
Well, Colonel Mamady Doumboya was very brief this morning when he was addressing the former government officials like ministers. The Prime Minister himself was former Prime Minister Ibrahim Kasori Fofana was there, and we have these heads of the national institutions. They are all there. So he was very much brief for just about 5 minutes. He told them that, look, none of you is allowed to travel out of Guinea, and you cannot go anywhere. And make sure that your passport and your traveling document, you hand over them all to your permanent secretaries. And he also asked them to leave behind them their official vehicles. So just after the meeting, and he asked all these former ministers to follow them to their base. They went there and they were held. These former ministers, including the Prime Minister, they were held there for a while before they were released. But they went home without their official vehicles. These vehicles were taken from them, and then some of them just called in, or some of them had to hire a taxi to go back home.
Thanks very much for that insight. Kareem Kamara there, speaking to us from Conakry. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Mamady Doumboya, the man behind the coup, who said the move was motivated by a desire to free Guineans from Conde's alleged mismanagement of the country. Doumboya is a relatively unknown figure to most of the country's public. He's a career officer who's taken part in missions around the world. He now appears to be in charge of his nation's fate. Sharon Gaffney with more.
Unknown to his compatriots when he first appeared on national television, Mamady Doumboya is described as discreet. Since 2018, the Lieutenant Colonel has headed Guinea's Special Forces, an elite unit that leads the fight against terrorism. It was created by the president he deposed, Alpha Conde. Draped with his country's flag, Doumboya told France 24 he was committed to a smooth transition of power.
It's our duty to save the country and bring the Ghanaian people together. We will put a system in place for all of the people to come together, because a political system that is not inclusive is a system that is not based on peace.
Before leading the Special Forces, he served in the French Foreign Legion. He also trained at a senior military academy in Paris.
He is someone with a lot of experience. He led several operations in Afghanistan. We can say that he's ready to hit the ground running.
Observers say the success of the military coup can be explained by the significant number of opponents to the rule of President Conde in the ranks of the army and among the general population.
Well, a quick look at some other news. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has wished his predecessor a quick recovery as opposition groups condemned the decision over the weekend to allow Jacob Zuma out of jail on medical parole. The 79-year-old former head of state had served just 2 months of a 15-month sentence for contempt of court. He'd previously been hospitalized a month into his incarceration for an undisclosed illness. Critics of the move suspect that it was politically motivated. Prison officials deny this. A Telecoms blackout's been brought in the northwestern Nigerian state of Zamfara. Authorities ordered the shutdown as part of a crackdown on armed kidnappers who have been terrorizing communities there. Mobile networks stopped working over the weekend. Zamfara has been hit badly by a wave of mass abductions for ransom. Last week, more than 70 pupils were kidnapped from a secondary school in the village of Kaya. And finally, an art festival highlighting the damage done by a throwaway culture has just wrapped up in Kinshasa. The Kinect Festival made its return to Democratic Republic of Congo after having to be cancelled last year because of the pandemic. Artists use materials that others have thrown away to create works that raise awareness about the dangers of pollution. Nick Jamal with more.
A colourful parade in the streets of Kinshasa. It was the 5th edition of the Kinect Festival, and the concept is still the same. Artists use objects that they found in bins. The aim is to raise awareness about the environment and art.
Les CD que vous voyez, les disques, ce sont des trucs récupérés aux poubelles pour créer, quoi. Donc c'est ce que moi je dis souvent, de la récupération, la transformation et la création, c'est ce que je fais.
Some of the work is exhibited in the artists' headquarters. The festival's main message is to denounce the rubbish abandoned in the streets of Kinshasa, the 3rd biggest city in Africa.
On la trouve sale, très sale, et ça fait longtemps, hein. Ça fait très très longtemps. Et justement, c'est pour cela, nous, on fait ces festivals. C'est vraiment pour ça, c'est vraiment pour dire, bon, on vit dans les déchets, qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec ces déchets?
In the streets of Congo's capital, residents enjoyed the festivities.
Vraiment, eza eloko moya malamu. Et puis kopesa pe moi propriété na mboka parce que tout le monde a ba sachet nini eza non dégradable ezobebisa sol.
The festival lasted 3 weeks. Artists underlined the fact that most of the litter here comes from imported goods.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.